All right, so let's start over. We're engaging students in a transition to online learning. And now my second slide lost its effect, but let's give it a try again. All right, so I'm depending on you to give your students A's because I think they deserve it. They work really hard, and if they don't work hard, then you can help them to, to work hard. But I'm going to be giving you a few B's. The B's that we're going to focus on in this presentation are to be human, to be present, and to be adaptable. And we'll talk about what that means. First and foremost, I want to say that there is no perfect online professor. There's no perfect ground professor. Um, you shouldn't strive to be somebody else. You should really be yourself, be human. Oscar Wilde told us that to be yourself because everyone else is taken. And if you know anything about Oscar Wilde, he was jailed for being himself. So he was really true to that. I want to talk, before we get into those B's, I want to talk about the concept of synchronous and asynchronous, which has become instantly much more important in this landscape, in this educational milieu, than in previous generations. Now, online learning is not new. It spans a generation, but an asynchronous versus synchronous is not new either. So what that means is synchronous communication is something that happens at the same time. Those of you who are on this call right now are participating in a synchronous discussion with me. If you are viewing this on YouTube after the call, then you're engaging in asynchronous. So it either happens at a different time or a same time. And it can happen in person. Today, that's a little more rare than a few weeks ago, or it can happen in a different place. So if we look at the same place, asynchronous, that could be like a library. Like somebody checks out a library book, they read it, consume the content, they return the book. Somebody else checks out that same book. It's the same content, but they do it at a different time. And so that would be asynchronous learning that takes place in the same environment. If it's at the same place and it takes place in the same time, that would be like a classroom setting or a conversation that you're having with somebody in person. If you're having that same conversation over the telephone or over web conferencing or video, some kind of virtual classroom, then that would be the same time, it's synchronous, but it's taking place in a different place. People are in different time zones. In my class, I have students that span all different time zones and even different continents. We're not all in the same, even the same half of the globe. And then there's asynchronous communication that takes place at a different time. And that would be everybody who's watching this webinar who is not with me right now in person. You're watching a recording of me. You're watching the past me, my past self project. So I'm not aging with you, but you're growing with me, if that makes sense. Now let's talk about the EdTech grid. This is a diagram that I constructed for a class that talks about that same grid in terms of place and time with the different technologies. So if we're looking at a different time and a different place, for example, that could be YouTube, it could be an email message, it could be an online discussion, an infographic that you create, text messaging to somebody who doesn't respond right away, it could be asynchronous as well, podcasting, as opposed to the same time, something synchronous, but different places. If you're in different locations, that could be texting while the person is responsive, video conferencing, or webinar like I'm giving right now, FaceTiming on an Apple device, GoToMeeting, Zoom. It could be social media. It could be a telephone call as well. And so I'll have these slides available for you after the presentation. You can look at some of these other interactions as well. And so the trick is that we first want to determine what kind of learning is taking place, are synchronous or asynchronous, in the same place or in a different place. And then once we're in that quadrant, look for technology that will facilitate that. What we don't want to do is see a technology and think, boy, that would be really interesting. How can I possibly integrate that into my class? Because EdTech should serve the modality. It should serve your lesson and not the other way around. So you've heard of, we've all heard of Bloom's taxonomy on this call. We're all educators. But for those in the psychology realm, we also hear of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this takes place before Bloom's taxonomy. Essentially, we have a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid is this self-actualization. It's the best person that we could possibly be. Before we can be that, we have other things that we need to fulfill. We have things like safety needs and physiological needs. You know, we need air and food, sustenance, clothing, that kind of thing before we can get to these later steps. And today we're living in an interesting time where there's something at the bottom below physiological needs in education, at least. I don't know if this is a human right, but we're seeing that the workplace really depends on the internet. I put Wi-Fi. It doesn't really have to be Wi-Fi. When we're talking about our students, it can be a landline without Wi-Fi. But in this category, we would have things like right now, our online students need devices. They need batteries, power supply for their devices, and they need some way to access the internet. And that has become a physiological need just about. And so what we have to consider is we have to Maslow before we can bloom. So let's get into those B's that I was talking about. The first one is be human. And if you notice any background noise, we're all working from home. We all have our kids from home. It's a different era, and I have a 1-year-old baby who is excited right now about whatever's going on downstairs. And so if that seeps into this webinar, then I appreciate your understanding. And that's essentially how we can also present ourselves to our students. You know, don't pretend like everything is perfect at your home. We're in home offices. We might be in our living room. You might be on your couch or something. There might be movement around you as best we can. We want to avoid those distractions. But right now we're in quarantine, and so my baby is present. And that's, you know, that's kind of part of being human. So I'm glad she was making noise a second ago, because that expresses me. I'm at home right now. I'm working from home. My kids are learning from home, and that's the reality of the situation. I don't want to produce some perfect video or perfect lesson and present myself in a way that isn't genuine, that isn't how I present myself in the classroom. So you can see this first point. What do you do in your classroom to foster relationships? Whatever you do, keep doing that. It's important. We'll talk about some ways that you can do it. So simulate the human experience. Try and be human. You're not a robot, and your students shouldn't think that you're robots either. So use videos, use ample videos. I'm going to say that many times over the course of this presentation, is use videos, because we're living in a day where we have the tools, whether it's a phone or a digital camera or a webcam or professional materials. We have platforms such as Canvas Studio or Screencast-O-Matic, or you can Google webcasting or screencasting software. We have access to that, and we have bandwidth. Internet is faster than ever, although last week it was not as fast as it has been, but I'm sure that our vendors and service providers are working on that. You can also pick up the phone and call your students, or send them text messages, send them email. You know, try and make that connection. Make sure that you establish that connection, because you've been in the classroom with them, engaging with them, and you want to keep that up. Another one is you want to model behaviors. It says if you want students to participate, then show them how. And a good way to do that, I think, is to treat assignments like a one-on-one session, to try and connect with them, really give them feedback, and hopefully we give them meaningful feedback anyway. But it's an additional opportunity to really connect with students one-on-one, or if it's a group project, to really connect with the people in the group. One thing that I do in my class, all of my classes, I have weekly cafes, a weekly cafe check-in and reflection question. And in that, it's a discussion, and I'll preface this by saying I have experience teaching synchronously in classroom settings, but for the last 8 years, I've been teaching online as well. And so this is how I engage my online students, is to provide these weekly cafes. It's low stakes or non-graded. I put water cooler hangouts. It's a chance for people to really connect with each other, because in a classroom setting, it's easy to build a community because you're sitting next to each other, you're talking to each other, you know each other's mannerisms. In online, you know, online people tend to feel that on-ground people take that for granted because it's hard building a community. We have to purposefully create those connections with our students and students between each other. So I have a cafe every Monday. It's a chance for us to check in, to let each other know how we're doing. You know, the student who was shopping around for that fridge, how's the fridge shopping going? Did you get a fridge you liked? Car problems, or you know, difficulties on the job, or you know, if you want to vent or if you want to boast, or it's just a chance. And that could be an ungraded discussion post, or you could assign it something minimal, trivial, or low stakes, like 5 points. You know, just as long as you put something out there, then you'll get a couple points for it, you know, just to kind of incentivize it. But it's a good chance really to build those meaningful relationships that in an online setting, it's easy for students to feel siloed and disconnected. And so we really want to pull them back into the class and connect them. Another B that I'm going to give you is to be present. What you don't want to do, whether you're on a virtual conference call with your students or a discussion post where there isn't much activity, you don't want to say, is anybody there? It's like, no, you don't want to say that. Again, what you did before, you want to do that again. You know, what did you do in your classrooms to be present? Do that, because what you did before is the precedent, and students are expecting that. So how you interacted with them, how you showed your presence in the physical classroom, you want to translate that into online. And so you want to log in. I think we're all using Canvas, log in regularly, whether it's daily or often, and simulate the human experience. Again, this is the same point, and it might feel like I'm being lazy from the other B, but engage in videos. You know, don't underestimate the power of face-to-face time with your students. Give them a phone call; they'll appreciate that. Send a text. Now, I did invite some K-12 participants on this webinar from my kid's elementary school, Independence Elementary, and so perhaps you can't send a text, but perhaps you can email the parents or send a text message to the parents and check in that way. And that would also be good, because in K-12, you don't want to isolate the students without involving the parents anyway. So it's a good chance to connect with them. Send them a video, send them a text. When in Canvas, you want to log in very regularly and be on time. It says engage in meaningful discourse, provide direction. There are various ways you can do this. You can have an office hour every day that I'm going to be present from 1 to 2, Monday through Friday, or my office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4, and log on, be on time, and field questions. You can decide what to do with that time. Also, keep a student log. This can be very useful as well. I mentioned my weekly cafe check-ins, and I'll mention the duality of that particular assignment is, one, it builds connections between students and me, but it's also a way that I can keep track of my students and get to know them individually, one-on-one, in a way that I know what their struggles are, what their strengths are, how they're doing, where they live, and I can build that connection. Another thing you can do is get a spreadsheet, and every week you can update it with things so that you get to know the student. Now, for our K-12 friends, that's a little bit easier because you've had several months of being in a physical classroom for 8 hours a day with them. So I don't imagine that you have any question about who your students are. But we still want to keep on track, because how we have been for the last 8 months is different than how we're going to be in the coming weeks, just as everything changes and we have new struggles and trials. And so it's important to stay on top of that. An interesting thing, so I want to take a pause from the B's and get onto a side note, talking about the dynamics and structure of online versus in person. Now, in an in-person classroom, typically you'll have an instructor, a sage on the stage, who is teaching the audience, the participants or the learners or students. So the person would give some discourse, give some instruction, and perhaps ask a question to the participants, to your students, in which case you expect an answer. You don't expect everybody to talk at one time, but perhaps one student will say something and another student will jump in with a response to that. And this is dynamic. The conversation is moving and we're engaging the learners, and then the teacher will take the reins again and begin talking some more. And your hope is that everybody in the classroom is reflecting on the dialogue, the instruction. And this is the method that we've had since Socrates, Aristotle, even the times of Jesus. One drawback to this scenario is that time is a scarce resource in a classroom. So really all of these thoughts hopefully are in line with what the professor is saying, but in reality, it doesn't leave room for tangential thoughts because the thinker might miss some important discourse, and that can be a drawback, because those tangential thoughts are really important for internal constructivism. And also, crossfire in this situation is not productive. So 2 or 3 people can't be talking at the same time because that's just cacophony, and that's not productive. And this setting really also rewards thinkers who are quick, who are profound, and can think profoundly within a short time limit. Because if you ask a question, you want a response from somebody, whatever's on the top of their head. It doesn't give them time to really mull things over and formulate a comprehensive response to whatever's being asked. Now, I reflect sometimes on Mark Twain, facetious as he is, he was insightful when he said that college is a place where professors' lecture notes go straight to the students' lecture notes without passing through the brains of either. And that's kind of the drawback of the sage on the stage model. Now, there are a lot of benefits to the sage on the stage as well, but in online learning, we get to adapt this model because in online learning, essentially everybody can be talking at the same time. If it's an online discussion board, for example, and so really the role of the professor in this scenario shifts from sage on the stage to guide on the side. And what's important for us is that we leave the professorial ego in the office, and so that we can engage students, but also encourage them to engage each other. Another benefit to this is there are no back row sleepers. If we saw in the previous thing, this person might be doing his own thing and she might be taking a nap. In online learning, there are no naps because everybody's accountable. But that might sound draconian. In reality, what we're trying to foster in online learning is this constructivism, and that time is no constraint like it is in the classroom. It is a constraint, but you have time to reflect. You have time to listen, reflect, and then respond. And 5 people can be responding at the same time in online learning because it happens more or less at their pace. And it's not within the strict schedule of a classroom agenda. And so, constructivist learning occurs as learners are actively involved in the process of constructing meaning, which can happen with one person sharing thoughts and ideas and then elaborating on another person's thoughts and ideas. And so our responsibilities as online professors and instructors is to create those opportunities for students to be active contributors of their education and collaborate with others within the classroom. That brings me to a learning theory, talking about the science of learning, which is the communicative inquiry. I have a link to the bottom here, and if you haven't heard of this, do a Google search, and there are a lot of resources on this. But essentially, we're looking at this balance between content, resources, the class materials, and the students as the learners, and then the instructor or professor or teacher who is facilitating the learning. And we want a clean balance. We want students to interact with each other. We want them to effectively interact with the content, and we also want to incorporate ourselves into their learning. If there's too much instructor, then the content and the students become subsidiary, just like a typical large lecture hall at a large university, and that's not effective as well. It's not an effective scenario for online learning. because even if it's a discussion board, the professor shouldn't monopolize the discussion board. You want to facilitate the discussion board. Oops, I accidentally hit the keyboard. I guess I'm moving on. So I want to talk about certain ways that we can engage students and encourage students to engage each other and have students engage with the content. One way is to post announcements regularly in Canvas. Do weekly concept overviews. This is something I do before the week, in which I do a screencast and I show the students exactly the tasks that we're going to be doing, the objectives, the assignments, what I expect from the assignments, how they turn in the assignments. It's a logistics high-level overview. I'll create videos. You can create videos as personal messages to students or as feedback in Canvas for their assignments, or you can just FaceTime, or there are many ways in which we can incorporate videos. You want to interact on discussion boards as well, not monopolize, but really encourage forward movement in the discussion boards. Provide feedback videos, which I touched on a second ago, which in the gradebook in SpeedGrader, you have the option of recording a webcam video. And so that can be a really effective and engaging way to interact with students. It's something that I've done over the years. The first time I did it, I actually injured my hand and I had to mobilize it for a week, and I had papers to grade. And I apologized to this. I didn't apologize. I told the students I appreciate their understanding, but I can't type on the keyboard except with one hand. And so all of my feedback was video feedback. And it ended up being really well received and really engaging for the students. And so now not every assignment is a video webcam feedback from me, but I try to incorporate that several times throughout the semester, throughout the term. Video, just reiterating, use video as much as you can. We all wake up without makeup on, without hair being combed, or whatever, and maybe put a comb through your hair, but be yourself. You don't have to be a professionally polished anchor person, as you create videos for your students. You can engage in podcasts or mini lectures. Like I said in the previous 2 slides ago, have office hours, hold regular office hours where students can come in. They could either be structured office hours or unstructured office hours. Just invite students to be with you. And of course, video, I'm going to mention it once again. So community inquiry is an evidence-based strategy. There are other evidence-based strategies as well, and I'm not going to touch into these much. I'm going to move forward with my own presentation, but look into Quality Matters, OSCAR, which was developed by the Online Learning Consortium in partnership, I think, with SUNY, New York colleges. These are great ways to help you set up your course. They have rubrics and guidelines, and really this is the benchmark. That doesn't mean if you're not doing something that you're a bad teacher, but this is a great way to structure your content, is to walk through those rubrics, and it sets a lower threshold of good online content. So we're going to talk about the other B. I mentioned 3 Bs. I'm going to sneak in a 4th B right here. You're going to be straight B students. This is be like water, which is what Bruce Lee used to say, in which he meant, well, he said, be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. The water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. I want to say as a side note that what he wasn't talking about, obviously what he wasn't talking about, but don't think about learning styles. And learning styles you might have heard of, well, some students need visual instruction, some people audio or reading or kinesthetic, whatever that is. Don't fall into learning styles. Be yourself. Learning styles separate people, and they really restrict creativity, freedom, and growth. But we need to be flexible, like water, and not pigeonhole ourselves into thinking I need to do this a certain way, or else it's not going to be effective. So, like Bruce Lee says, be flexible in mind. And I think Bruce Lee also said, be flexible in ed tech, in the ed tech that you incorporate into your classrooms. I have to look it up. That might not be the exact quote, but something to that effect. That's what I'm saying anyway. So the last B that I'm sharing with you is be adaptable. And I sound like a broken record, but I say here what you I don't mean to say what do you do in your class. No, yeah, that's what I meant. What do you do in your classrooms to evaluate learning? That was supposed to be a question. I'm sorry, I didn't read that right. But do that. Whatever you do, whatever you did before, do that because that sets a precedent. Now, there are ways that we can be flexible and still help our students. One way, three ways really, is reflect often on the data. You have data provided to you in Canvas, and you can leverage that. So one is grade performance. So we have the grade book, update the grade book regularly, try and stay on top of that. Today's Monday, so I'm gonna get into the grade book later tonight and try and get my feedback from my students for the work they did over the weekend. Be punctual, and the grade book can identify flag students and help you identify those so you can help them. Also look at attendance. Now attendance, I don't know whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, if you're holding class calls that they need to attend, or if you're using videos. Now we have Canvas Studio at TCS Education System, which is a video platform that's integrated right into Canvas, and it's great because you can record a webcam video or a screencast video, or you can upload a video that you have on your computer, import it from YouTube into the studio, and then you have analytics. You have these metrics and you have the data. You can see which student saw the video. You can see, did the student view the whole video, or did he skip around? Did he watch the beginning and the end, but he skipped parts in the middle? Or if you were using a quiz as part of the video in Studio, did they just jump to the parts of the video that have questions and they didn't watch the other parts? And you can also track attendance for web conferencing. If it's something synchronous that you need to be together, then take attendance that way. And also content access. Within Canvas, you can see which student has logged into Canvas, but also what pages the student has viewed. Did the student log into one page lots of times? Did they go back and back to that? That could be an indicator that the student's having problems with that particular lesson, that activity. What you don't want to do, whether you're looking at content access or attendance, is you don't want to say, reach out to the student and say, I noticed you haven't logged in 3 days. You don't want to shame them. You want to encourage the students with activity, but not shame the students with activity. Instead, what you want to say is there anything I can do to support you? Or, offer your assistance, but be encouraging and don't shame them. And then what you want to do, you reflect on this data every day, every week at the minimum, or every few days. Triangulate that data. Don't think that grade performance is everything, that's the sole metric of if a student is doing well or not. Look at these other things and then build a story around each student. You want an action plan with them, which involves communication. There are various communication ways. You can email, call them. You can individual web conference if it's not too much work. Not that you have to be conferencing individually one-on-one every student every week, but especially if you think it would be an appropriate measure for one student versus another, then reach out to them however you think would be most effective, and then engage them, express care, and offer support. Something that we can be doing as we're being adaptable is, I like this model. It's the start, stop, continue model. And it's essentially, you can do this each week. You can do it for every activity that you do, every assignment, but do it frequently. Is come up with 3 lists and evaluate. So this lesson that we did, or this week, here are the things that I think were effective. And those are the things you want to continue. Whatever you did well that you want to continue doing, then put that on a list. If there's something that didn't work well, and there might be various things that didn't work well, make a note of that we can't do that. We either have to stop that or modify how we did that in some way so that we can be effective. and solicit feedback from your students regularly. I get feedback from my students every week, and when I teach online, I give them a very low stakes or no point survey that I ask them to, that evaluates the activities that we did during the week. And I try and shake things up. I don't have just a regular written assignment and discussion thread every week. I try and mix it up with some group activities, have them do some digital scrapbooking and share that with each other. And I want to know if those are effective or if they're not effective. And so if they suggest something that, this assignment could be better if you did X, Y, Z, I'll put that on my start list. So start, stop, continue. The other thing I'll mention as on the side is, these are crazy times, and you want to let students talk about current events. Let them talk about what's going on. Work it into your lessons, or else it's going to work itself into your lessons. This is a pretty dramatic time. Self-isolations and quarantines and the news, and you have various states of panic, and you have various states of everybody's overreacting, and everything in the middle of that. But let your students talk about what's going on, all these changes. A lot of traditional students are becoming online students, maybe for the first time, and let them talk about that and how it's affecting them. Listen. But above all, this is a unique time for us, and it's a chance for us to fail forward. And I want to say that you incorporate technology as best you can. If it doesn't work and you fail, then try it again. Do this loop until you find success. I'll point out that whether or not students are technologically literate, they'll expect their teachers to be, but also that this is a fairly forgiving time for everybody, and it's a forgiving time to fail. So be forgiving of your students, and they'll be forgiving of you. And we're trying this together. And my hope is that we'll find success. And I want to pause this presentation and do an activity with everybody at this point. So I'm going to pull up this. I'm going to pull up Slido, which is slido.com. Feel free to participate if you would like. But if you log into slido.com and enter the code 3762, you can participate in this. And what I'm asking is, what is your biggest struggle transitioning to online learning right now? And I'll give you a moment while those start popping on, and I'm going to look to see, we have questions, and I know Thad's been curating the question box. I'll just take a moment to glance through that for a second. Let's see, one of the questions on the site here is if I can repeat the 3 B's again. So I want you to be human, be present, and the last one is be adaptable. Sorry, I threw me off for a second. There's some interesting, interesting things that we're sharing. So we have, bringing students up to speed on technology, and I would say bringing professors up to speed on technology. We have to fake it until we make it, and that my entire last week was supporting faculty. And some people are scared to death, but in reality, a lot of ed tech today is made in a way that, as it is as intuitive as possible. And I still think that there are some interface issues sometimes with platforms, but reach out to support networks, IT, ed tech, if you have them. Form a partnership with a few professors and try and support each other on that. Try and plan lessons together, for example, or at least approaches. Have people that you can lean on and that you can help, and that you can that they can help you as well. not staying glued to the computer is a conundrum. I mean, and especially with screen time being so dangerous, both psychologists and ophthalmologists, are raising some red flags about, if anything, the blue light levels of the computer screens. And so that's actually, it's pretty insightful that I worked a job that was data encoding, and by law, I don't know if it's law or company policy, but they had us, for every hour that we worked, we had to get up for 5 minutes, walk around, do some eye exercises, look far away and close and stretch the eye muscles. And that was every hour. And then every other hour, that 5-minute break was 10 minutes. And so we'd get up from our computer for 10 minutes and walk around, stretch the legs, do some exercises, eye exercises. And then I can't remember, but every like 4 hours or 5 hours, we would get up for 30 minutes. And that was our lunch. Essentially, that would be in the middle of our shift. But yeah, don't sit at your computer for 3 hours at a time. Don't sit at your computer even for 1 hour at a time. If you've been at your computer for 1 hour, just stand up, just do some exercises. I could have worked that into this lesson, but I didn't. One thing, I think a couple notes said classes are long, lectures are long. It's difficult to keep the students engaged that length of time online. That's not to say that you have to. I mean, it depends on your program, I suppose. If they want you to hold office hours for 3 hours and do a lesson for that 3 hours synchronously, like you always have, that's one thing, but you might consider breaking it up into smaller segments. Even an hour, if you can break it up into half an hour, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, if you can possibly do that. If you notice, TED Talks don't tend to be 3-hour long lectures. TED Talks are usually from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, somewhere in there. Some of them are even shorter, and they're effective, and that's called chunking material. Now, in the past, before the quarantine and everything, I gave webinars on effective video in online learning, and noting that this isn't the same application, but one of the principles that I would teach is that if you have a video with more than one main point to it, then that should really be more than one video. If you can make 4 or 5-minute videos, that'll be more effective in engaging students than one 20-minute video that covers 4 different things, if that makes sense. And feel free to reach out to me offline after this, and I can elaborate more on that. But as a thing to consider, and this is hard because this transition is sudden, but online learning and on-ground learning are different modules, different educational modules, and so you can't really expect to take an on-ground class and put it on the internet and call it online. There are a lot of things to consider, and so that gets into a little bit beyond engaging the students and what we're talking about right now, but reach out to me if you have other questions about that. All right, so being savvy with technology is a struggle, keeping the students engaged. Absolutely. Bandwidth can be an issue as well, and there is a resource that I would like to share with you as well. Let me just pull that up real quick. I found it, and I made a note because I wanted to share it with everybody. I'm going to hop over to a website, and it's called everyoneon.org. And let me put this in the chat window as well. Everyoneon.org helps to bridge the digital gap by providing low-cost internet providers, and sometimes free for your learners in this case. So I'm going to enter in my zip code, find internet and computer offers, so device or broadband, and I'll check all that apply. So suppose I'm low income and I have a student who is in K-12. So I check those two. You can check whichever ones apply, and I can see that, okay, here's a deal for internet, for cheap internet with an unlimited data plan. You can see that Spectrum, they also have an internet plan, a basic internet plan, but they're making internet free for K-12 or college students who don't have an internet plan already. I can see that somebody's offering devices, laptops and desktops for fairly cheap. And these are, based on those specs, it looks like it's good enough to engage in online learning. It would probably handle, you know, what we would have, what we would want. So this is everyoneon.org. Yeah, check that out. And thank you for the responding to these. I want to continue to look forward to that. I want to tackle some of the questions. It looks like there are quite a few questions in the question box, and I did leave time at the end here that we could cover that. So what best practices do you recommend to engage students on GoToMeeting who have been used to on-ground learning formats? GoToMeeting, there are various resources available. For one, the GoToMeeting website has tutorials and aids for people. You can reach out to IT help desk if you want help getting started. Last week, our IT at TCS Education System gave webinars every day of the week, and I imagine they'll have those on recording. Also, I'll mention that I'm creating a course right now as well. I have to pull that up. Thad, if you could find that, if you have the link to the GoToMeeting course, if you can just send that to me or put it in the chat, and then I'll pull that up. I'm creating a course with screenshots and easy user guides to walk people through how to navigate GoToMeeting, especially students, because this is an opportunity for them to host their own GoToMeeting sessions, whether it's study groups or group projects. And all students at our institution have access to GoToMeeting. And I'll mention for the for our K-12 people, we use GoToMeeting in our institution, but you might have Zoom or BlueJeans or Big Blue Button or another platform, and a lot of them are very similar. WebEx would be one. All right, so Thad put the link in the chat window in GoToWebinar here. This is a public course, so you don't have to be logged into a part of my institution to view this. You should be able to see all of this, and it just walks you through the basics of what is GoToMeeting, some netiquette guidelines about web conferencing, as this is new for some people. You know, what's the proper etiquette, as well as video tips, checklists if you want to create video, and then you can just walk through the details of the interface. PC looks a little bit different than Mac, so we have a Mac one too. PC has a new interface as well. I think it's just out of beta, but it's optional, and I'm going to create a guide using that interface because they did change some things. But for example, if you want to look up how to share your screen, then I have some some images and some text describing how you would do that. And so feel free to browse this course, send it to your students if you would like. One note, let's see, Bree, let me know if you want me to share that with the general crowd about Pacific Oaks, what they're doing. Another question is, how do we play videos via GoToMeeting or on the virtual classroom? The sound doesn't come through. I'm going to mention that video, and that's something that I'm trying to brainstorm with faculty all last week. Any web conferencing platform is not a good tool to share videos, to stream videos, because it optimizes for audio and webcams. But if you're playing a YouTube video, for example, or if you have a video on your computer and you play it in whatever file, iTunes or Windows video player, it's going to be a little bit laggy. The sound's not going to be great because the sound travels from your speakers into your microphone, and it loses a lot of quality there. And it's not going to be seamless because it doesn't translate into 29 frames per second or 24 or 60 frames per second, whatever the video rate is. And on GoToMeeting, it's going to convert that down to maybe 5 frames per second. Because generally with web conferencing, video is not as important as audio. And especially right now, Our bandwidth is being stretched all across the country. Internet service providers and virtual meeting vendors are just receiving an unprecedented amount of people working from home who are engaging in video things. So we have to be patient with them, as you know, patience all around, essentially. And so I haven't answered the question yet. This might not be a great thing, but perhaps have students give a pause in your lesson, have students pull up YouTube or Canvas Studio or wherever the video is, and play it on their end, as opposed to you sharing it on your end and streaming it out through GoToMeeting or Zoom or whatever platform you're on. Again, this is brand new, and I know videos can be an important part of education. Another option, probably the one that I would prefer, is to flip the classroom. Employ the flipped classroom model and have students all watch the videos before coming to the GoToMeeting session. And you can even put some questions, put a quiz with the video to make sure that they watch it, but hold them accountable that they come to class prepared with all of that content already seen. And if you're using Studio in Canvas, you can see which students viewed the video and if they skipped parts of it. And so that could be effective. And I know it's not ideal, it's not maybe what you're used to, but it's part of being adaptable. You know, it's part of the B that I gave you. One thing, so this is for Pacific Oaks. Anybody who teaches at Pacific Oaks does not require or recommend 3 hours of synchronous lectures, particularly in these times. So like I said about chunked material, try and chunk those 3-hour lectures into, I would say an hour would be the maximum. And I even think that an hour isn't effective. The reason I say that is because in the early days of the MOOCs, we're talking about 8 years ago, when Sebastian Thrun at Stanford and you know, all these people were putting their classes online, MITx, which became edX, excuse me, they tried just putting lectures online. And the draw was, you have a Harvard or Stanford professor who teaches his class, we recorded that class and we put it online. Now you can have the quality of education of an Ivy League or whatever. And they found that it's not as effective. An hour-long lecture or an hour and 30-minute lecture was not as effective as a 7-minute lecture or a series of 7-minute lectures. And they ran the stats. I think MIT ran the stats and published them, and they found, you know, chunked material is really effective. Another case study is that iTunes, this was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, iTunes came out with iTunes EDU. Likewise, YouTube came out with YouTube Education, where they would put lectures online, and it was shown to be not an effective model. And that goes back to what I was saying, is that these are different modalities. Traditional, blended, online are 3 different modalities, and you can't take a class that's designed in one modality and just incorporate it and say it's a different modality and this will work. An on-ground lecture will not work online without making some modifications. And so I think that's the background where Bree is saying that Pacific Oaks doesn't recommend, they don't require, or they don't recommend just having 3-hour lectures on Canvas. It's not a way to engage the students, really. So somebody's asking, where do I find that course for GoToMeeting? In GoToWebinar, check the chat window, not the questions window, but the chat window, and there's a link right there. Any other questions? Does anybody want to be unmuted and chat with us, or else you can just put questions in the question box. You can email us afterwards as well. Let's see. Bree, I'm going to unmute you so you can say a few words if you'd like.
And so if for those who don't know me, because I don't know who else on the call, I'm Bree Cook, Vice President of Academic Affairs for Pacific Oaks College. And I just wanted to support all of you guys. And just a quick note that we know this is like challenging for everybody, not just the students. And we want you to know that we are going to support you guys. I know the VPAAs at all the institutions are working hard to try to support all of our faculty during this time. And so we appreciate everything that you do. We appreciate that you're even on this webinar trying to learn better ways to engage your students. So again, thank you for everybody at all of the affiliates for taking an opportunity to listen to the webinar. If you're a PO faculty, I doubly thank you, particularly for the programs that are switching from on-ground to online during this time. We do have some programs like our MFT program that are not online at all. And, you know, we know that that material is going to pose some challenges. So we're all here to try to support that for you guys. But other than that, Sean, I don't have anything else. Thank you so much, Sean, and for you and Thad and the whole team for everything you've done for us. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for your support as well. Another question that came in is about group activities, which is great. And I might not answer your exact question right now, but I want to show you something, which is, and if you have to log off, if you have to prepare for another meeting, feel free. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all. I know we have busy schedules, and I've demanded a lot of your time already. But in Canvas, so this is Sandbox Canvas course. It has some dummy students. I want to show you, if you don't know how to create groups in Canvas, I'm just going to show you how to do that. So here is my class. This is a very small class. This is essentially my team, and I want to create a group. And I've done this before in other webinars, so I have a couple groups already. But I'm going to create a group set. And again, I'm in my class in Canvas, and I'm on the People's tab. Well, I can see everybody. I'm going to create a group. This group is called, I already have a group called Breakouts Group, maybe small group activity. And you can have the same group for however long throughout the term. You can allow self-sign-in. I never recommend that. I think it's always best for the instructor to assign people. That can be done randomly. You can split the group and split it into 3 groups, or you can do it manually. I'll show you both ways. You can assign a team leader for the group if you want or not. So here is small group activity, and it's thinking right now, but it's going to randomly assign the students in my class to that group. Usually this bar would go a lot faster. It's having a hang up for some reason. Let me hop back. Okay, there it is. Let's see, and we have a couple hands up. I'll get to your hand in a second. So you can see the groups here. Now those are called small group activity 1, 2, and 3. I can rename that to something else if I wanted to say, you know, team A, team B, team. Sometimes like in my consumer motivation class, I have team Disney, team Apple, team Target. I can drag and drop to move people around if I wanted to change people up a bit. And if this sorted automatically, if I hadn't sorted it automatically, everybody would be on the left here, and then I would have to manually drag and drop each person into the group. And so you can choose how to do that. And then the students on their Canvas instance, they're going to have a group tab that has their group right here. And so they have their own page. It's like a mini Canvas course where they have their own discussions, announcements, they can share files, they can work on documents together. And so that's an interesting way to break students into groups and have them accountable. You can even create a discussion assignment and make it a group discussion. And so you create one assignment, but then each group, they contribute to their own discussion, but they don't see the other discussions. It's only a small group discussion. And so I've done that. I've had groups where I have large groups made out of small groups, and I have them debate each other, and so a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I think a follow-up to who asked this? Shannon, you were asking this. One thing that might be part two of your question, I'm not certain, that I don't have a good answer for, is in an on-ground class, you might have an hour of lecture and then you break people up into groups and have them in different corners and then you float around. That's actually a little bit hard to do in online, and that's a big drawback. One thing you can do is have a team leader. So I'm going to point, Gia Lord Giddy, that's his real name. He's my colleague and he was in my graduate cohort as well. And Mike Braden, they're the team leaders. So they're going to create a GoToMeeting session and invite the other two and me. And so you'll have 3 GoToMeeting sessions, and then you can dial into one, log out, log into another, log out, log into this one, and you can hear their chat. But it doesn't have the same dynamic as walking around the classroom and checking in on them and taking notes. But it's one way that you can do that. What we can't do in GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting is have breakout groups, and that's unfortunate. You can do that in conferences, in Canvas. What I found, last week 2 times I tested conferences and found it really, really laggy. They're just not, I don't think that they are capable of supporting the amount of online students that we have all of a sudden. And that's why Canvas puts this note. They say, this is a free service, but it's, essentially it's not that great. So we recommend getting a premium account or partnering with Zoom or Hangouts or Teams. That's another thing you could do is Microsoft Teams, so I think, Shannon, that was your question. And so if not, let me know, but that's my thought on groups. I'm going to field some more questions here. James, that might have actually been your question. Let's see. Yeah, I think James was asking that and not Shannon. Transitioning small group in class activities. Yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Another question, I have 1 to 2 hours of lecture material. How can I break it up instead of having those long lectures? All right, we're at the top of the hour, but I will stay on as long as you guys have questions, and this is being recorded. So I have some ideas on that, John, that there are various approaches that you can do. For one, I prefer personally a tool called Camtasia. It's a paid tool, but with an educator license. And let me look up Camtasia Education. The educator license, it's actually pretty cheap. It's something like maybe 160 bucks, 169 bucks. You get this program where you can record a video, you can upload the video, and then you can edit the video. You can make it shorter. And I think that Camtasia is the best tool until you get to something like Adobe Premiere or something that's more professional. I think for a consumer, for the you and me level of video editing, and I'm making an assumption that you don't have video editing experience, I find this to be a good interface, and it's easy, and you can save your file either to YouTube or save it locally and upload it into Canvas Studio. And I'm not saying that you need to invest $170, but that if you do have $170, that you didn't lose in the stock market, then I think that that's a good investment. Otherwise, what I would do, let's play it around in here. I'm going to, actually, I'm not going to go to there. I'm going to go to Studio. Now everybody at TCS Education System has access to Studio, and if you've never visited Studio, I have another course for you. I'm going to share it in the chat window right there. This is an overview of what Canvas Studio is, and it'll tell you about how to get started. It goes from beginner to intermediate/advanced skills on Studio. Walk through this. It will take you probably 34 minutes to go through everything, watch all the videos that I created, and tinker with it. I'm going to pause real quick. I'm using a new interface for this. I'm going to switch this back. Just ignore for a moment. Ignore the man behind the the curtain because I have some enhancements that I didn't, that looks different than what you'd say. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Studio, either in course or in my global navigation. And now in Studio, you can record a screen capture or a webcam recording. Screen capture would be recording everything on my screen, my mouse clicks, all of that. Webcam would be my camera on my computer, so it's a talking head, or I can record both at the same time. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to browse my files. I'm hoping that I have something. Let me search real quick for. I must have some kind of video. Okay, I'm gonna rickroll you all guys because I didn't know that that's a short video and it's not going to take a long time to upload. No, timeout. I did that wrong. Okay, so with this, I won't be able to edit it. What I'm actually going to do right now is I'm going to create a screen capture, and I apologize for. No, I appreciate your understanding. So that's one way to upload a video that you've already created. What we want to do is edit a video, and so here I can share my screen, or I can share the webcam. Here's my webcam. Sorry, I didn't close that back door. And I'm just going to record something for a couple of seconds. So I'm creating a recording. I'm going to pause that recording. I'm going to click done. Now that takes me to an interface. It's on my other monitor. I have to bring it over real quick. Oh, come on. No, I don't want to upload it right now. I want to edit it. And what I'm going to do is insert a video at the beginning. And I will look for, let's see, videos. Where's that Rick Astley video? Right there. Okay, so I'm going to put it in right there. It's copying. All right, now I have this video, and just pretend it's not Rick Astley. It's your 2-hour-long lecture. So right now I need to crop that out. So let me cut out part of that, and now I need to drag the bar and choose what to cut. So I'm going to cut everything from, no, let me put that right here. So this is a 20-minute lecture, and I'm going to stretch this out, and I'm going to delete the rest of this. Right, so click OK. All right, so now I uploaded my video that was a 2-hour-long video, and I converted it to a 20-minute video. And I can also, I can start a new cut right here and edit. I'm just rickrolling you all over the place. All right, so when I'm done, now I can hide my cursor or show my cursor or my webcam. You can narrate over the video if you want. I'm just going to click done, put a title, say this is lecture number 1 or whatever it is, your description, and click upload, and then it will upload. I'm not going to upload it because I don't want, I don't want to rickroll myself. And then once you have that video uploaded, then you can put it onto any page in Canvas that has the rich content editor. So it can be an announcement, a Canvas page, an assignment, a discussion, a quiz, any of those things. Anytime you see the rich content editor here, you'll see the studio button, and then you just go to my uploads and you select the video that you want. Do you want students to be able to comment on the video? Maybe you do, or maybe you just want to embed a video without comments. I think as you're talking about, John was asking about this, I think commenting would be a great feature. Let me show you what that would be like. I'm going to embed this now. I'm going to say video announcement, but this could be on a Canvas page, or it could be on a discussion page or an assignment page. I'm going to disallow commenting on the announcement. Save this. So what that did is it created a video breath so that you don't so that you don't start the. All right, so this is my video, my lecture that I have. And on the timeline, as students are watching, they can pause it or they can play and they can add a comment. They say, here is my comment. Put in the comment, and then on the timeline, you can see the placeholder for the comment. And then the comment appears on the page. And not only that, but okay, that student, suppose it's a student who is asking a question, you can respond. You know, my reply is such, and other students can talk about that as well. And then over here, you can notice a comment at the 26-second mark. That's where the timeline is when I put my cursor into the comment. I can say, you know, another question that I have, notify replies or not, put that comment, and suppose multiple students were commenting there. I also had that question, and you can comment there. Now, as I play this, you can see the questions popping up right here. And if I click on that question, now let me try that again. If I click on the question, it'll take me to that question. And so you can have a good dialogue around your video. I can also see insights. Now, nobody has seen this video because I just posted it 2 seconds ago, but I can see all of the students in my class, and I can see the views. Okay, the class seems to be doing pretty well, but how well did Jenny in particular do? Did she watch part of it and not another part of it? Or this student, you could see, okay, they skipped that part, and they watched this other part 2 times, or they watched it 5 times, or whatever. You can also caption your videos, which isn't really part of this necessarily, but what you want to do is, oh, I already captioned it. Go to the captions tab, you'll select English, and you can generate captions automatically, which you can edit afterwards. And so I can click close caption, and then it'll caption. And that's just a good practice, not only for online, but just for any video that you ever put in your class. You want to caption it. And that's just for accessibility purposes. It makes it easier for students to follow along. They can read and hear at the same time. It's just more effective. But it also accommodates students who might be hard of hearing, because videos really favor people who are not hard of hearing, or deaf students with deafness. All right, so that was an overview. I wasn't planning on teaching about Studio, but I did emphasize video a lot in my talk, and so I think it's important to have a high-level overview. If you have other questions about Studio, please visit this link that's in the chat and go to the webinar and start tinkering around, start playing with it. Don't be afraid to put your webcam on. I was going to have my webcam throughout this whole webinar, and I simply forgot. No other reason. And I can share that now, except for now I realized that I didn't close down that I didn't close that door to the laundry room, and I'm embarrassed about that. And so, but you know what? You got to be human. You got to be yourself. So I am going to be, I'm just going to do that. Let me see. Where is my webcam? Oh, I'm having a hard time sharing the right webcam now. Webcams, preferences, integrated, Brio. All right. Right, you know, because this is who I am. I have artwork behind me. I have, I don't know, my hair is combed. I have the laundry room with the door open. If I was more professional, I would have closed that. But you know, if I tell you to be authentic, then I'd better demonstrate the behavior, right? Let me get to some more questions. One question is about the group assignments. Let me hop back over to people. So group assignments. So 2 things I can share about that. For one, we just created this group, and I know that this group has Gia, Thad, Brandy. Gia is the team leader. I can visit their group homepage. I'm going to visit that in a different tab. Now, this is different than the DTL sandbox. This is different than my course. It is the group within the course. And I can switch from one group to another group. I can see the people. Here's Gia, Thad, Brandy, and me as the teacher. They have their own pages. They can create pages. I can create pages for them. Announcements. I can create an announcement for this group, or they can create announcements themselves. Discussions. They can share files with each other. They have a home page. And I can jump from this group to the next group. So here's group 2. And this is just called small group activity 2. It could be team A, team B, whatever you call them. Let's jump over to people, and I can see, okay, Lord, Juan, and Mark are part of this group, and I'm also part of this group. And so I hop back over. Now I'm back in my main class, and I can see the group there. So yes, the question was, review the group assignments. This is different than GoToMeeting because groups is like a Canvas course. It's like a mini Canvas course only for them. Let me show you real quick how you can integrate groups into assignment work. I'm going to create a discussion. So this is my, let's just call it week 4 discussion, whatever the title is, and whatever I'm just going to put some boilerplate text in there. And those are my instructions. Put pictures, put whatever, threaded replies. I'm going to check, this is a group discussion. Now I have several groups in this class. I have the small group activity that we just created, a couple of groups that I created previously. I'm going to select that. I'm going to say, yeah, this is graded and it's due, it's due tomorrow. Save and publish. Now, this is going to be different since I selected that this is a group activity. You'll notice this. Since this is a group discussion, each group has its own conversation for this topic. Here are the ones you have access to. So this isn't a class-wide discussion anymore. This is a group discussion. So they're going to discuss amongst themselves. And so here's a discussion for group 1. Then I can jump around to another group and I can go to their discussions. Now these students can participate in this discussion, but they can't participate in the other group discussions. It's like you're siloing them. You're creating small groups and having them discuss among themselves. And so I think that's a very effective approach. I'm going to come back to this discussion type. What you can also do, if you wanted, is within these discussions, since it's a team discussion, you can say, group 1, I want you to discuss, this will be your assignment, and group 2, I want you to discuss this one, and we have 3 groups, and so, oops. And notice that I'm using headers to distinguish between the groups as opposed to just taking text and making it really large and bolding it. And that's an important concept for accessibility purposes, which is a different webinar that we do. But when possible, use headers. No, not when possible. Always use headers to distinguish sections of your paper. So here I have general instructions up top here. And then maybe I want group 1 to focus on something, constructivism. Group 2, I want you to focus on behaviorism. And group 3, I want you to focus on some other learning theory. Or you give different instructions to different things. So there are various ways in which you can use groups within Canvas. Be creative, fail forward, share what works, share what doesn't work with your colleagues. A question is, can we share Studio with other instructors? Yes, you can. So I'm going to hop back out to Studio in the navigation here. Which video do you want to share? Here's one. I can click on this is called a kebab icon. Hey, get out of here. I thought I deleted you. Click on what you want to share in your, again, I clicked on Studio and Global Navigation. Click on Share Media. It's going to create a link for you. So I'm going to create a public link. This is a link that I can copy and email it, or send it to somebody. If you want to the embed code, then it gives you embed code. And what is embed code? Well, it's good that you asked. Embed code allows you to put the video into somewhere like right here. If you go to the HTML editor and paste the code that you just copied, then it'll put the video right into the page like that. Another way to do that, and more easier way, is put the cursor where you want it and click on Insert/Edit Media, and then embed it on the Embed tab right there. And that works not only for videos, this will work for anything that you can embed. So if I go to Padlet, for example, or Sway, whichever one loads up faster, the race is on. Padlet, Sway wins. All right, so if I click on a Sway, for example, and click on Share and get the embed code, I can copy that embed code. And then on the page here, I will put the cursor where I want it, and I'm going to paste the embed code. All right, and let's save it to see what this looks like now. All right, so now I just embedded a Sway, which if there's anybody still on the call from Independence Elementary School, this was presented to SAC as well as the PTO a few years ago. My wife put that together, and here's a video that we just embedded. If you have other questions about embedding, I have a YouTube video dedicated to embedding content on my channel, which is youtube.com/tcsedtech. I'm just going to search for embed on my channel. 2 years ago, yeah, here's a good one. Here's a session that I did. We're talking about just last month. I had a conference at Pacific Oaks University. There's the link to it in the chat. You can learn all about embedding content that way. Another question, Tracy mentioned you rickrolled us. I rickrolled you several times during this presentation. It wasn't in my lesson plan, but it happened, so deal with it. Any other questions? I think there were some hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and lower the hands. If you want, raise it right now if you want to be unmuted and if you want to chat about anything. One question is the link to embedding video content. Please, there's a link in the chat window, and that's the YouTube video. You can view that. It's about 22 minutes long. I think I have another video that's longer, but that covers the basics of it. Let's see. Here's another video if you'd like a different take on it. This was one I did a couple years ago at InstructureCon. The link to that is also in the chat. Last call for questions. Let's see, Christian Cox, I unmuted you if you'd like to, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to thank you. Every time I listen to you, I learn a little bit more, finally. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for attending. All right, with that, I think we've gone through the questions. We've also gone 22 minutes over the hour. And I appreciate everybody who stuck with it for your great questions. You never know, open it up for questions, you know, what path we're going to take, but I think that we covered some really good ground with this webinar. So if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to me. And thank you again for attending.